Hi YouTube, I'm Govier, and this video isn't so much about mastering for cassette duplication. This is actually how to master a final song from Ableton or Logic and actually master it to cassette. And why master to cassette, you might ask? Well, it's because when you are limiting or compressing something digitally, there's no tape saturation and harmonic distortion. Whereas when you push tape past 0 dB, it actually adds a natural musical harmonic distortion and compression since you're overloading the magnetic tape, and you can get pretty cool results. I honestly feel like it makes sense, all of the draw to cassette, because it's a more affordable option and requires less maintenance than a stereophonic or quadraphonic reel-to-reel. And you can pretty much get a nice 3-head deck for under $100 if you're willing to, go to a local pawn shop and look around, or maybe find one on eBay or something like that. So my first tip is to use Type 2 60-minute or less tapes. And why is that? Why not use 90-minute tapes? Well, it's because the 60-minute tapes or shorter are made of a slightly thicker mill, so you get better frequency response generally when using shorter than 60-minute or 60-minute tapes. I would suggest using a big brand like TDK or Maxell as opposed to like Fuji or Sony. I know some people really like Sony tapes, but I think that TDK and Maxell are what most of these machines are biased and calibrated for. And TDK and Maxell tapes can also be found on eBay, sealed. I would actually recommend getting some tapes from like Duplication or someone who's making new Type 2 tapes, because you're not sure how those tapes have been stored, the TDK and Maxell tapes that are on eBay. And some of them are from the 80s and 90s, and so it can be kind of a risky deal there. Experiment with the tapes, because each tape has its own frequency response curve, and so you might find a tape that you like more than other tapes for the sound. Tip number 2. Don't use noise reduction when mastering to cassette. You've worked so hard to get this mix how you like it. You got your guitars, you got your drums, you got your bass, you got your singing. Everything sounds great, right? And what noise reduction does, whether it's Dolby B, Dolby C, DBX, it alters the dynamics of your song. And if it's DBX, it actually doesn't allow for tape saturation at all. If it's Dolby B or C, anytime you go above 0 dB, the noise reduction turns off and allows for saturation, but you still don't want that. What you're looking for in this mastering to cassette tape is to be able to push the tape and allow the tape to basically be your compressor and limiter in the final mix down. So noise reduction kind of defeats the whole purpose of mastering to cassette. But at the same time, if it sounds good to you, it's probably good. This is just what I would personally do. And this leads me to tip number 3, which is to turn off all of your limiters and heavy compressors on your master bus if you're going to be mastering to cassette, because once again, it defeats the purpose of the cassette actually being the compressor for you and kind of squeezing the sound and creating the nice harmonic distortion that we're going after when we actually do this in the first place. Tip number 4 is to EQ before you bounce down to cassette. And this is because if you think of the cassette as a compressor, a lot of people filter out the nasty low, like 200 hertz and maybe like the 2K kind of harsh frequencies before you go into the compressor, because you don't want those compressed. You don't want those brought to the light, so to speak. You really want the cassette bounce to be the last step of the master. Tip number 5, which is to experiment with your levels, because every tape machine has its own quirks, and most of us are not working with biased machines. Some really nice machines have biasing on the front, but these are old machines. They're not necessarily calibrated. They're not biased by a pro. I mean, some of you may have one out there that is. My Porta Studios are, but not my decks, my cassette deck. So it's important that you experiment with the different levels of saturation. You might like it right just pushing zero, right at, pushing 0 dB. You might like it at like +6, depending on the song, depending on the style. I feel like a lot of the like hip hop type, lo-fi study beat type things, they might like it more pushed because they want it more compressed. They want more crunch, almost like a Mad Lib type sound. But if you're looking for a little bit of a more dynamic sound, like classical music, I know that's an extreme example, but like you're not going to want to push the tape super hard. You're going to want to preserve the dynamics. And so you just need to experiment with the different levels on your machine and the tape that you're using. And the sixth and final tip is to use a reference track while you're mastering. And this is so that you can hear a master that you actually are kind of shooting for. You're not trying to copy it or anything like that, but just something that sounds like something that you enjoy listening to. And you need to listen to that on what you're mastering on. Like you need to listen to that if you're using headphones, you got to listen to it on your headphones. I would really recommend getting monitors, but even really nice monitors. Like I'm in a room right now that's not acoustically treated necessarily. And so it's not going to be super accurate all the time. So I need to listen to something so that I have a frame of reference for how that stuff that I like sounds in my acoustic space through my monitors. So I would just recommend sitting down right in the middle of your monitors that are pointed at you at the right angle and all that, and just listen to a few masters of songs that you like and hear how that sounds in your space. And that's pretty much it, guys. I'm not a professional, but I don't think there's very many videos about this on YouTube. I feel like there's a lot of videos about cassette duplication. And so I'm going to be making a lot more cassette videos in the future. I do a lot of cassette recording, and I just recorded a band's album on a Tascam 488. And so I'll probably have some videos of live mixdowns of that. So if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to subscribe and drop a like if you want to. Thanks. Bye.